So we're going to be finding the midpoints of a segment, which uses this formula. Okay, and basically the way it works out is we have the endpoints of some segment A and B. And the coordinates for A are x1, y1. That just means the first x and the first y. And the coordinates for B are x2, y2. So to find the midpoint of this segment, we add the two x's together and divide by 2. That gives us the middle x. Add the two y's together, divide by 2, and that gives us the middle y, and that gives us the coordinates for the midpoint. So if I have some segment, and it's say this endpoint is 5, -2, and this endpoint over here is 7, 10. Just random. To find the midpoint, 5 plus 7 divided by 2, -2 plus 10 divided by 2. So that's 12 divided by 2 and 8 divided by 2. So 6, 4. So that's the coordinates for that midpoint, which would be equally distant between the two ends. Sometimes you'll get a number that's odd, so it doesn't divide by 2. So let's just say, hypothetical, we're doing our thing and we get, say, 10 over 2 and 7 over 2. Once we added, then it's 5 and 7/2. Just leave it a fraction. Or you can put it into decimal if you want. It would be 3.5. But you can just leave it a fraction. There's no real reason not to. So if you get an odd number, just leave it over 2. But, okay, there's different problems that we'll use midpoint calculation. When we get into some triangle things, we're going to have some midpoints and some other things. But if we have some segment with these endpoints, we want to find the midpoint. We already did this. Plug in the values 2 and 6. So this is x1, y1, x2, y2. So those go there. Then that gives us 6 divided by 2, which is 3, and 20 divided by 2, which is 10. So that's our midpoint, 310. Another one requires a little more thinking. That's where we're given one end and the midpoint, and we want to find the other end. There are, but so the original way to do it is the algebraic way. Okay, and that's where we take our midpoint formula, which the midpoint is x1 plus, see, now I'm mixing up my x's and y's. x1, x2 divided by 2, and then y1, y2 divided by 2. So if we know the midpoint, we know that that equals the first x, which is -4, plus the second x divided by 2, and then the first y, which is 8, plus the second y divided by 2. And what we don't know is the second x and the second y. This right here, this math would give us 6 if we knew the other endpoint. And this math right here would give us -12 if we knew the other endpoint. So to set this up, 6 is equal to -4 plus x2 divided by 2. And -12 is equal to 8 plus y2 divided by 2. We're going to multiply both sides by 2 on both of these. And that cancels these 2's out. Which leaves us with 6 is equal to -4 plus x2. Add 4 to both sides. x2 is equal to 10. Over here, that gives us -24 is equal to 8 plus y2, subtract 8 from both sides, and negative 32 is equal to y2, so the other end is 10, negative 32. Okay, so that's the way to do it with algebra. Without algebra, you're going to do 2 times the midpoint, and then you're going to subtract the end point, and that's going to give you the other end. So this is the one given, and this is the one missing. Okay, so I'm going to take the midpoint and I'm going to multiply it by 2, which is going to give me 12, negative 24. Right, because I'm going to multiply that 2 in. And then I'm going to subtract my endpoint, which is negative 4, 8. And when I subtract, I also need to bring that negative in. So negative 4 becomes plus 4, and minus 8 becomes negative 8. And so I have 12 plus 12 plus 4. Oh, I forgot to multiply by 2 over here. Okay. Sorry. That should have been 12, not 6. See where I made my mistake? I didn't bring down the multiplying by 2. Okay. 16. 12 plus 4 is 16, and then negative 4 and negative 8 is negative 32. So that's our missing end. You get the same answer both ways if you actually multiply by 2, like you're supposed to. And as a matter of fact, these are the same steps. I multiply by 2, I subtract, which is add or subtract the other end. So it's the same steps, it's just this is done with algebra, this is done without algebra. Pick the way that makes sense to you. Alright, later when we're doing triangles, we're going to have the mid-segment theorem. And so you have to find the midpoints of the sides of the triangle. So we're going to practice that now. Here's our points that are given, and we're going to draw our triangle. That's our triangle. And the reason it's a good idea to draw the triangle is because then you know which ends go together. So these two ends together will give me this midpoint. These two together will give me this midpoint, and etc. So I'll find those 3 midpoints. So we're going to do it this way. So M was negative 1, 6. N is 1, 3. And L is negative 3, 2. Okay, so the midpoint of LM, remember midpoint is x1, x2 divided by 2, y1, y2 divided by 2. So I have LM is this side, so negative 1 plus negative 3 divided by 2, and then the y's 6 plus 2 divided by 2. So that's negative 4 and 8. So the midpoint is negative 2, 4. And you can kind of check. You can go negative 2 and then up 4. And you can see that's on the line, and it looks about the middle of it, so, you know, probably right. If you got like 2, 4, you'd be way over here, and you'd see that it wouldn't fit. Okay, the midpoint of MN, I have negative 1 plus 1 divided by 2, and 6 plus 3 divided by 2, which gives me 0 over 2 and 9 over 2, which is 0 and 9 halves, which is 4 1/2. So if I go 0, 3, 4 1/2, there I am. There's my midpoint. And then ln is my last one, so I have negative 3 plus 1 and 2 plus 3. So negative 2 over 2 and 5 over 2, which is negative 1 and 2 1/2. Okay, negative 1, 2 1/2. There I am. So I found all my midpoints. Like I said, later when we're dealing with triangles, there's the mid-segment theorem. And mid-segments connect midpoints, so you have to find the midpoints to find the mid-segments. So we'll have already found midpoints, so you're halfway there. Actually, pretty much all the way there, because then if you could just connect the dots, there's the mid-segment done, kind of thing. We're almost done. So here you have the two endpoints. You're going to find the midpoint. Here you have one midpoint and one endpoint. You're trying to find the other end. Okay, so on this one we're going to do finding the midpoint. So 6 plus 12 divided by 2 and negative 2 plus 4 divided by 2. That gives me 18 divided by 2, which is 9, and 2 divided by 2, which is 1. And then I'm going to do C. I have, this is the end, this is the middle, and there's always the midpoint on these. So I'm going to do 2 times the midpoint, which gives me 8, 10, minus the end that they gave me. So 8 minus 6 is 2. 10 minus negative 3 is 13. So that's the other end. So why don't you guys try B and D real quick, and then I'll give you the answers and make sure you're understanding it, kind of thing. So here are the answers. Do you guys want me to go over either of those? Got them? Awesome. Yeah, so I have the end point in the middle, so I do 2 times the middle, which will give me negative 4, 6, and then I subtract the end point. So negative 4 minus 2 is negative 6, and 6 minus 1 is 5. So with these, is 2 times the middle minus the end. Or you can do it algebraically, which was back in the notes. It just takes up more room, so I don't have really room to put that here. Okay, slope. I know you all hate it. I'm going to try to make it less painful. Slope. Okay, slope is just how steep is the line. So slope is literally how far up did you go versus how far over did you go. Up is rise, over is run, and slope is rise, over run. If you can't remember that, remember you have to rise, you have to get up before you can go running. So it comes on top. It's represented by the letter M. I've had lots of people ask me why M. M means magnitude, and magnitude is also steepness. So that's where that came from. Several ways to write slope. We have change in y over change in x, which is rise over run, and algebraically we use this. So if I have an x and a y, and I have another x and a y, it does not matter which one I set as the ones and which one I set as the twos. What matters is that they're both ones and both twos. I can't have x1, y2 in the same pair. Okay, so this is x1, this is y1, x2, y2, or vice versa. This could have been x1, y1, x2, y2. Just the ones go together, the twos go together. Okay, that's where it's important, because otherwise it'll mess this up. Okay, any questions so far? You will need to make sure you have this formula. So So, to find the slope of a line given an equation, we have to put it into y equals mx plus b format. This is another way to find slope. If we have an equation, right there, slope. So we rearrange equations into this format where it's y by itself equals everything else, and then this guy is the slope, and just for future reference, this guy is the y-intercept. So the first thing I want to do is I want to get this x over here. There's two ways to do that. I can either pick it up, move it over, and change the sign. So if you change sides, you change signs. And that is negative 4y is equal to negative 2x plus 7, because the 7 was positive. Then I have to divide by negative 4, because I want y by. So I divide by negative 4. Everything divides by negative 4, not just one. So I have y is equal to 2 over 4 is 1/2. Negative over negative made it positive. Minus 7 over 4, I don't really care. You should just leave that like that. And here is my slope. Darn it. Now that was with me just picking it up and moving it, but if you're not familiar with that and you don't like it, you can go the more traditional route, which is where you subtract it from both sides. Just remember that 7 minus 2x doesn't equal anything, because one's got an x and one doesn't. So you end up with the same thing, and that's the same as that. Horizontal lines have a slope of 0. And the reason they have a slope of 0, I didn't mean to do that, is because the rise is non-existent. We don't go up or down, we don't go up or down, we're just flat. So it's rise over run, so it's 0 over any number, it doesn't really matter, and it gives us a slope of 0. And the equation of a horizontal flat line is always y equals n, and n is the number where it hits the y-axis. So if this is 1, 2, 3, 4, this equation is y equals 4. Okay. So horizontal lines are really nice to find the equation to. You just look where is it hitting and go, okay, 5, y equals 5, or whatever. Vertical lines are up and down, straight up and down. The slope is undefined, and the reason being is that the run is 0, and so you have some number divided by 0, which is impossible. You cannot divide by 0, so it's undefined. Okay. Think of it like, to try to remember that this is undefined, it's impossible. You couldn't drive a car on a vertical slope. Like, it's impossible to, gravity won't allow you to drive a car up a vertical slope, so you just, crash. Okay, this number n here is where the number hits the x-axis. So if I'm at 1, 2, 3, this would be x equals 3. And if it was over here, it would be x equals negative whatever. So it's just the same thing as the y's, except, and it's easy to remember if it's supposed to be x or y, because x equation like this will never hit the y-axis. It only hits the x-axis. So that's x equals whatever number it's hitting at. And y, horizontal lines, will never hit the x-axis unless it is the actual x-axis itself. And same thing here, if it's the actual y-axis itself, it's hitting the y-axis, but it's not hitting it anywhere else. So these are y equals whatever number it's hitting. Any questions on those? Okay. All right, given 2 points, we're going to use the slope formula, and we're going to substitute and simplify. So we want to call this x1, y1, x2, y2. So y1, or sorry, y2, which is negative 9, minus y1, which is negative 1. Two negatives are positive. So this is negative 9 plus 8 over 7 minus 5. And that gives me, sorry, I wrote 8, I meant 1. I added it in my head already. So negative 9 plus 1 is 8.
Yeah.
And so I stepped ahead of myself and said, and said the answer instead of writing down the right number. So negative 9 plus 1 is negative 8 over 2, so our slope is negative 4. Okay. Does it matter if I called this x2, y2, and this one x1, y1? No. Watch. If I did it this way, I would have negative 1 minus negative 9 over 5 minus 7, which would give me 8 over negative 2, which would still give me negative 4. The only way you'll get that wrong, it doesn't matter if these are 1s or these are 2s or whatever, but if I say this is a 1 and this is a 2, I can't have x1, y2. So you have to keep, they both have to be 1s, they both have to be 2s, and then the pairs have to match this way too. So like, see, this is x2, y2, so that's this set. The sets have to stay together on top of each other. Does that make sense? So just to make sure that they're in the same order, because otherwise it's going to give you the wrong sign. Okay, and just to help, positive slopes move this way, they go up as you read. Negative slopes move this way, they go down as you read. So if you have a picture of the graph and you're trying to calculate the slope like this and you get a positive number when your graph looks like this, you'll know that you messed up somewhere. Because if your graph looks like this, it's a negative slope. And you shouldn't get a positive number. Just a way to double check yourself. All right, here we're going to find our missing value. Okay, so what we have is slope is equal to y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So negative 3 is equal to, I'm going to call this x2, y2, and this one x1, y1. So I have negative 2 minus negative 11 over x minus 1. So that's negative 2 plus 11 over x minus 1. So that's 9 over x minus 1. So I need to find out what number down here can work with this to make this all work out, right? So what I need to do is I'm going to add a denominator of 1, and I'm going to cross multiply. It's not the same food. I don't know what food it is. Okay, so what I have is now negative 3 times x minus 1 is equal to 1 times 9. So negative 3x plus 3, so I distribute that, is equal to 9. Subtract 3 from both sides. Negative 3x is equal to 6. Divide by negative 3, and I get x is equal to negative 2. Sometimes very easy. They're saying, tell us the slope. Hey, look, there it is. Right? So if it's already in the right format, you're done. Just say what the slope is. Okay, sometimes we do have to rearrange it, so I'm going to pick up this x and move it to the other side so it changes signs and it becomes negative. So I either pick it up and move it and change the sign, or I can add or subtract it to both sides like that. Then I divide everything by 3. So I get negative 3x plus 4, and there's my slope. So my slope is negative 3. here, I'm going to use the formula. So I usually just go in order, but it really doesn't matter. Some people like to evaluate, which is going to give you nicer numbers and then make it flip around or whatever, but it really, it's up to you. I usually just go in order. So I have 12 minus negative 5 over 4 minus 1. So that's 12 plus 5 over 3. So that's 17 thirds. Leave it a fraction. It's rise over run, so its slope is perfectly acceptable and more useful as a fraction. And then for this one, I have negative 13 minus negative 3, and then 15 minus 15, which it does not even matter what this number is. I see that my denominator is going to be 0. If my denominator is 0, I am undefined. Cannot have a 0 denominator. Do you guys want to know why? Here's why. If I do 6 divided by 2, that equals 3, right? 2 times 3 equals 6. So that's how division and multiplication undo each other. 5 divided by 0 equals what? I need something times 0 that will equal 5. There's nothing. There's nothing. That's why it's undefined, because there's nothing that I can multiply 0 times to equal anything other than 0, because 0 times everything is 0, right? So you can't divide by 0. Now technically some people might say, well, you could do 0 over 0 because 0 times anything is 0, but then we still wouldn't know what goes here. So even 0 cannot be divided by 0. No number can be divided by 0, and that's why. If you have 0 in the numerator, if you have 0 up here, then your answer is just 0. If it's up top, your answer is 0. If it's in the bottom, your answer is undefined. Or does not exist, or the empty set, which is this symbol right here, which means it doesn't exist. So you can say no solution, you can say undefined, you can say it doesn't exist. Just something that lets me know that you know that this is not okay.